Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says, can Donbas republics work as a buffer zone? Let us try and understand what is this article all about. We have something called as the Commonwealth of Independent States. This was established in the year 1991 after the disintegration of the Soviet Union. It has about 12 countries which includes Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. This happens to be a dysfunctional organization. It was created in 1991 primarily to have some common policies. It can be in terms of economy, foreign relations, defense, immigration policy, environmental protection, so on and so forth. What is this article speaking about? The article says there are about three regions of the erstwhile Commonwealth of Independent States. Which are these three regions? One, it speaks about Transnistria. The other, it speaks about Abkhazia. The third, it speaks about is in reference to South Ossetia. All these three regions have internal sovereignty, but they do not have the external sovereignty. So this article proposes a way forward that in the near future, the Donbas republics, which includes Luhansk and Donetsk, can also have a similar proposal where they have internal sovereignty but not external sovereignty, so that there is peace and tranquility in this region between Russia and Ukraine, proposes the author. Let us try and understand what is the author's intention in this article. First up, we have to understand one of the international public law principle called as recognition. What is recognition? Recognition, as it denotes, is a process whereby certain facts are accepted and endowed with a certain legal status such as statehood, sovereignty over newly acquired territory, or the international effects on the grants of nationality. Let me simplify this process for you. Let's say there is a new country or there is a new territory that is created. This new territory should be recognized by multiple other countries. Let's say, for example, there is a new country called as X. This new country X should be recognized by multiple countries world over. It should be recognized by United States of America. It should be recognized by India. It should be recognized by United Kingdom. So when a new territory is formed, recognition means that multiple countries world over will have to accept them. So the minute it is accepted by multiple other countries, it is called as recognition. Let's go back to the year 1971. We had West Pakistan, we also had East Pakistan. East Pakistan eventually went on to become Bangladesh. So many countries started recognizing Bangladesh, which means they understood that there is a new country that is created, a new territory that is formed, which is called as recognition. So what is recognition? It is a formal acknowledgement or acceptance of a new state as an international personality in the international community. So you recognize, which means that there is a country called as Bangladesh, there is a country called as X, is what is called as recognition. When it comes to the essentials of a state, we have something called as the Montevideo Conference. The Montevideo Conference goes on to say that if you have to recognize a territory, if you have to recognize a country, if you have to recognize a state, it has four important essentials. What are these essentials? One, what you require is the population. First, any country to be called as a state or a country, what it requires is a population. This population is not well defined. It can be as big as China, it can be as small as the Vatican. So what you require is a population for that particular country. So population can be big or it can be small as well. So the first essential that you have is a population. The second essential, what you require is the territory. So it requires a prescribed territory, it requires a land boundary, so it requires a political map that is drawn, which is the second essential according to the Montevideo Conference. The third that you require is the government. So what is the government? The government can be in the form of presidential system, it can be in the form of, let's say, the prime ministerial cabinet form of government. So what you require is a government which is running the affairs of that particular territory, which is running the affairs of the people in that particular territory. So the third essential that you have is the government. Finally, what you require is the sovereignty. sovereignty. The sovereignty because that particular government is able to take decisions independent on its own. So when we say recognition, so when we say there are essentials of the state, all these will have to be provided. Only then you can call a particular state as a country. Only then you can call this particular space, the region, a territory, and that is when recognition can be done by multiple other countries. When we speak about recognition, there are two types of recognition. One is what is called as the de facto recognition. The other is what is called as the de jure recognition. The de facto recognition is also called as para recognition according to this article. So basically there are two types of recognition. One is the de facto recognition, the other is the de jure recognition. What is this de facto recognition? This is the recognition given to that particular country for a temporary period of time. This is a recognition given to that particular region when there is instability in that part of the region, and this happens to be a recognition given momentarily so that there is a transition process taking place. So what you have as de facto is nothing but a temporary recognition given by few countries and which may not be acceptable for the United Nations. So this is a transition phase. It can be a phase which can ultimately lead to de jure, or it may not even lead to de jure as well. What is this de jure? Basically, the recognition of the permanent status is what is called as de jure. De jure happens to be a permanent recognition given by multiple countries, and such a region, such a country with a territory and its people can also be represented in the United Nations. So what exactly happens when it comes to de facto? It is temporary. When it comes to de jure, it is permanent. The recognition that is conferred for de facto is based on factual situation and is not a process of law. But when it comes to de jure, it is a procedure of law. Diplomatic representatives are not exchanged when it comes to de facto. Let's say, for example, we have a particular region which is not recognized by India. This happens to be a de facto country. This happens to be a de facto region. Will India send representatives, diplomats to this region? No. That is what is called as de facto. So de facto basically means there will be no embassy, there will be no diplomats that a particular country will send to that specific region. But when it comes to de jure, we would have our diplomatic representatives. So what are the legal effects of such recognition? So when you have the de jure recognition, what we will have is the diplomatic relationship. We would be able to enter into treaty with that particular state. We would be able to recognize that particular territory. We can sue that particular country, and we can also be sued as well. And at the same time, all these countries that recognize them, after which it becomes part of the United Nations. But when it comes to de facto, membership to United Nations is not possible. So this article currently goes on to say that we have Transnistria, we also have Abkhazia, we also have South Ossetia, which are currently de facto, which means these are nothing but temporary regions which have been accorded internal sovereignty and not external sovereignty. They do not have membership at United Nations. Many countries do not even recognize them. Many countries do not even know that they exist as well, and it is only few countries which might have recognized them. Now, when it comes to the present situation, we have Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which are recognized by Russia and some of its allies like Syria, Nauru, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And when it comes to Transnistria, it is not even recognized as an independent even by Russia. So what this article recommends is that going forward, we can also have Donbas region similar to such region to prevent the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. What are the advantages of giving the de facto status to the Donbas region? Basically, as of now, there is a lot of animosity and hatred between Russia and Ukraine. In order to prevent this, in order to establish peace in this region, what we can create is a de facto region out of Luhansk and Donetsk. So basically, Russia would be satisfied that this would be acting as a buffer zone, and at the same time, there would be no human right violations committed by another country to the sovereignty of Ukraine. So Ukraine can also stay stay happy, Russia will also stay happy, and peace can prevail in this particular region. So the author goes on to say that for us to establish peace in this particular region, we have to bring in the parastatus to the Donbas region between Russia and Ukraine. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, what do we know about the newest crater on the moon? The article here is speaking about two important parameters. One, it speaks about the crater. The other aspect it speaks about is in reference to the space junk. When we look into the context, a leftover piece of a spacecraft flying through space reportedly hit the surface of the moon, creating new crater that may be around 65 feet wide. First, let us understand what is this crater on the moon. What is the crater on the moon? This is caused by the asteroid, or it can be caused by a meteorite when it collides the lunar surface. So the minute it hits the lunar surface, or it can be the earth as well, so extraterritorial, so it can be something like a space object, an asteroid or a meteorite. When it hits the surface, it creates this pattern called as the crater. So what are craters? They are nothing but caused by the asteroids or the meteorites when they collide the lunar surface. When it comes to the lunar surface, it creates number of craters which is not comparatively the same when it comes to the earth. We have different types of craters. We have Copernicus, we have W, we have Oceanus Procellarum, we also have Tycho, we also have E. These are the number of craters that have been named with respect to the moon. Now the most important question is, craters have hit both the earth and the moon, but the number of craters are comparatively more on the moon and not on the earth. Why? The article goes on to say that is because of three primary reasons. One is because of the atmosphere present in the earth. The second is because of the absence of tectonics on the moon. And the third is because of the absence of the volcanism. Because the earth has the atmosphere, it has the wind system, it also has a weather system which is absent in the moon. That is why it is not able to change the character of the craters. But when it comes to the earth, it is able to change the character of the crater because of the presence of the atmosphere. The second being the tectonics. There is geological activity taking place on the earth, but that is not the same when it comes to the moon. And finally, there is presence of volcanoes, presence of volcanism that happens on the earth, which is not the same when it comes to the moon. And as a result, what we have is huge number of craters that are unchanged in the moon, but when it comes to earth, because of all these consequences running on the earth, the number of craters impact is not seen on the earth. So the first part of the article with respect to the crater is covered. The second part of the article is speaking about the space debris. What is it about the space debris? Space debris or space junk is basically discarded material from the launch vehicles like rockets or parts of the spacecraft that are left to roam around in the space. So what exactly happens? These are the pieces of machinery or the debris or the waste that is left by the humans in the space. It can be a huge object, it can be a big object, and it can also be a small object that is present in the space. So those objects which are present because of the human created factors is what is called as space debris. And in the present situation, what we also have is one of the space debris which did hit the moon as well and has created the impact of the crater. How does the space junk get into the space? That is because of the human induced activities. All the space junk is the result of us launching the satellites into the space, and sometimes we are not able to get it back into the earth in an intact form, which has resulted in the space junk. What is the impact because of the space debris? We know for the fact that the satellites or its waste components are traveling in a space at a very high speed. When it hits another satellite, it can destroy the spacecraft or the satellite. So the first major problem is that these space debris travel at a higher speed. They may hit another satellite, and ultimately this satellite could also be destroyed. The second problem is with respect to the global economy. How will it impact the global economy? When we have the satellites, it has multiple functions. Let's say for example, it is providing the GPS, or let's say for example, it is providing the communication, or it is providing weather related data as well. If all of a sudden the satellites get destroyed, these means of communication, weather and GPS may not work as well. According to some of the studies, if GPS outage occurs in United States of America for a single day, it may cost United States of America as much as 1 billion a day if the GPS does not work. And finally, the space debris increases the cost for the satellite operators. What exactly happens? We might have a private agency or a government agency which might have launched a satellite. Ideally, if there is no space debris, the space debris will not hit the satellite. It will not cause any negative impact as well. But since there is presence of the space debris, they also have to provide protective and mitigating measures as well. They have to provide an extra cover to the satellite as well. Since they have to provide this extra cover which is protective in nature, the cost for building a satellite will also increase. So these are the negative impacts because of the space debris. How do we overcome this particular issue? India currently has come up with a project Netra. What is this Netra project? It stands for Network for Space Object Tracking and Analysis. So basically, it will provide early warning system in space to detect the debris and also provide all the important data with respect to the space debris to India. Then we have multiple other countries as well. Let's say for example, Japan's Aerospace Exploration Agency and the European Space Agency have been working together, and they have also collaborated with multiple startups as well so that they can come up with innovative measures to prevent the space debris in the near future. We also have the ESA, that is the European Space Agency, which has also established ESA space debris research as well. This will develop and deploy the impact detectors. It will also develop the impact assessment tools as well. It will support the shielding design verification and ultimately provide an assessment of the impact of damage to this existing system. So basically, these are some of the measures taken by India and the other scientific agencies world over in order to mitigate the impact of space debris. And this becomes even more important in the near future. Why? Because there are a number of companies, let's say for example SpaceX or Amazon, which are also planning to launch thousands of satellites to achieve global satellite internet coverage. Since it is planning to provide internet coverage in the near future, it becomes all more important that they are protected and the space debris is removed on a periodic basis. How was this object spotted in the space? We had the American astronomer Bill Gray, who was first to predict this particular collision, and Gray happens to be an astronomer who runs a project called as Project Pluto, which is a blog that tracks near Earth objects. This Project Pluto also supplies astronomical software to amateurs and professional astronomers, and he is the creator of popular astronomy software called as Guide as well. How can we understand the impact of the space debris on moon? Currently we have NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and ISRO's Chandrayaan-2 orbiter, which are the active lunar missions. They in all probability can look into the impact with respect to this crater, but since it is on the far side of the moon, it may also get difficult to understand the impact with respect to this issue. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the world calls for maritime cooperation. What is the context? India, Maldives, Sri Lanka and Mauritius have agreed upon a roadmap for further cooperation in the areas of maritime security and countering terrorism. This was in backdrop of what is called as the Colombo Security Conclave. So what is this Colombo Security Conclave? This is a regional security grouping. It was initially formed in the year 2011 as a trilateral Indian Ocean Maritime Security grouping which involved India, Sri Lanka and Maldives, and now we have a new member in the form of Mauritius. So basically all these countries have come together to cooperate on the maritime front, and they will also counter terrorism in the near future as well. Another major aspect why it is important for India is we know for the fact that China is able to enhance its power when it comes to the Indian Ocean region. In order to prevent China from influencing this region and also to hold a strategic importance in the Indian Ocean region, India is able to cut the Chinese footprint by cooperating with all these countries. In this particular Colombo conclave, what happened? They came up with 5 important areas. One is the maritime safety and security, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, countering terrorism and radicalization, combating trafficking and organized crime, cyber security and protection of critical infrastructure. All these areas were identified by these countries so that in the near future they are able to cooperate on all these areas, share the intelligence, share the information so that there is prosperous development of all these countries. This is an initiative taken by India so that there is establishment of peace and tranquility in all these countries. So these five pillars were identified, and in the near future what these countries will do is to cooperate and collaborate and also further the capacity building to strengthen the information between all these countries. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says sugar exports accelerate on global price rally and weak rupee. What is the context? Indian sugar mills signed contracts to export 5,50,000 tons of sugar as there was surging global prices and a weak rupee, which helped in export of the sugar from India to multiple countries. So what are the major reasons? One is because the output from Brazil is comparatively reduced, and the other reason is because of the spike in the crude oil prices. Because of all these reasons, India is being able to export, and as a result the stockpile that we have in India is comparatively reduced. The support to the local sugar farmers have also increased as well, and ultimately it has helped the farmers in India. One, we are able to reduce the stockpile of the sugar, and at the same time these people who had a lot of stockpile for number of days are now being able to export, and this will ultimately generate income for these farmers as well. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Is the de facto status model followed by Abkhazia, Transnistria and South Ossetia a possible way out for the Russia-Ukraine conflict? Critically examine. Next question. Discuss the risks associated with space debris and suggest measures to reduce the threats posed by them. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. Do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.